talk to us more about the impact of the Israel Hamas war on the Philippine economy, we have with us on the show RCBC Chief Economist Mike Ricafort. Good morning, Mike. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good morning, Diego, and to all your viewers.
Yes, let's get right to it. NEDA has earlier said that the conflict will have no major impact on the Philippine economy. Now, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, because basing on the numbers, the OFW remittances year to date and also for last year, those coming from Israel accounted for 0.3% of the total remittances.
Okay.
So it may not be that large, but of course, if there should be, well, in case there would be repatriation from Israel, so yeah, there could be some adverse impact on because there are more than 30,000 OFWs there, mostly caregivers, tourism workers, and domestic workers, and so on. So yeah, but the thing is, the geopolitics behind it. Well, that's the risk that we're watching,
Okay.
especially if there would be a potential impact on world oil prices, especially if the respective allies are dragged into the conflict.
Okay.
For instance, Iran is it's a supporter and it finances Hamas. So now everybody else is anticipating the ground offensive by Israel
Yes.
versus Hamas in Gaza. So now also the major world leaders, led by the U.S. and other developed countries, we're also working in an effort to prevent a wider or escalation of the said
Yeah.
war that could potentially involve the respective allies like Iran or other parts of the Middle East eventually. So, however, it's still contained for now.
Okay.
That's a good news for now. It's oil price is at the NYMEX oil is $86, lower than yesterday's 87. That's among the highest in a week. A week ago when trading resumed right after the start of the said war, the Monday of last week, it's practically at similar levels. In fact, even late last week, oil even declined to as low as 83 to $84. That
Yes,
was
that's
the
right.
starting point.
That's right.
Yeah, it started at 83 to $84 prior to the war last October 6. Because the war started during the weekend, during Saturday when there was no more trading. So, well, at least it still looks manageable for now.
Okay.
But of course, well, at least the world leaders, the major powers, are also working to prevent that from spreading further into the region, especially in the Middle East, and that could potentially impact and could potentially also involve major oil producers in the process. So yeah, that's of course it could still slow down. Actually, even before this war, there's already some downward revision on the GDP growth estimates
That's
for
right.
the country.
You were quoted as
And
saying that may have the economic managers may have to lower their growth projections in light of the war. But how much do you think will this downgrade be? I mean, 6 to 7% projection is no longer achievable.
well, what's more likely if you look at the summary right now for the multilaterals, you have the World Bank, ADB, IMF, and you have the credit rating
Yeah.
agencies. They have all revised to 5% levels. That's still decent, Diego.
Yes.
Coming from some of them projected at least 6% early on, a few months ago. So this is just a part of of course, what's realistic, what could be met realistically within the year. So it's somewhere between 5.5% to 6%.
Okay.
That's still workable. So yeah, it's still, but nonetheless, that kind of growth of 5 to 6% levels for this year, and even for the coming years, that's still relatively decent and still among the fastest in the region, in ASEAN, in Asia, and among relatively larger countries because prior to the pandemic,
Mhm.
uh, the economy, well, it was growing at least 6% from 2012 to
Yes,
29.
that's right.
And we're just going back to that because of the improved, well, because of our improved demographics. You see, you look at the employment figures; they're among the strongest in 17 to 18 years when it comes to unemployment data, the employment data, and even underemployment. Although underemployment rate is still at double-digit levels, at
Mhm.
least 11%, but that's already near the lowest or the best since records started in 1990.
So,
So that kind of, yeah, go ahead, Jake.
no, no, go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so that kind of corroborates with the favorable demographics of the
Mm.
country.
Okay.
And that's why, yeah, of course, why is that? The country is in a demographic sweet spot or demographic dividend since 2015, one of the last countries in ASEAN to do so.
Mhm.
Other countries, the more advanced Asian countries, were ahead of us 40, 50 years when it comes to demographic sweet spot. And other ASEAN countries were ahead 10 to 20 years. So it's now the moment of the Philippines, meaning there are more than 110 million Filipinos. That's the 12th largest population in the world.
Yes.
And majority, more than 50 million working age. The number of working Filipinos, more than 48 million. So that's an economic force to really reckon with in a positive manner because there will be people with more jobs. Average age is below 25. So they have earning power, they have spending power. They would start families. They would purchase homes, vehicles. They would spend. They would travel. They would invest. And that's why the economic growth is relatively
So,
strong.
in other words, sir, you're saying we're in good shape.
Yeah, well, actually, even different for at least different administrations for the past 20
Mhm.
years. Look at our rankings in remittances. That's more than 40 billion. That's 36 billion cash remittances and more than 4 billion.
That's right.
Uh, yeah, that's more. That's number. The Philippines is number 4 in the world
But
after India, China,
mhm.
and Mexico. For a time, the Philippines even overtook Mexico, say around 5 years ago. So, and then now we're in BPO, we're number 2. That's more than $35 billion per year and
Okay.
still growing despite AI. The industry association is looking at least
So,
$50 billion. I think it's $59 billion by in 6 years' time, and that's gonna overtake remittances. So we're number 2 there, and the Philippines is number 1 in contact center
so
operations.
while
So
we're
the
doing
potential.
well, sir, in terms of growth, but I would like to ask, what's your projection this time for inflation for the rest of the year, considering we're at the tail end already of 2023?
Yeah, the average, Diego. Yeah, true. Yeah, that's well the challenge, of course, the offsetting factors, the
Mhm.
risk factors, higher prices. That's one of the reasons, Diego, why economic growth suddenly slowed down in the second quarter, partly because of higher prices. Because what would otherwise be spent by Filipinos,
Mhm.
and also companies, institutions like the government,
Yeah.
well, it went well. What would otherwise be spent on many things, so it otherwise went
Mhm.
to paying higher prices for oil and other prices of commodities and products. So estimate 6 to 6.5% average inflation for the year, but the latest one is 6.1% for the month of September. But due to the higher base effect a year ago,
Mhm.
it may, well, there's a good chance for it to slow down a bit at 5% levels in the fourth quarter. And
Oh,
next year, because of, well, the peak was January, high denominator, high base. So mathematically, that could be the lowest,
okay.
January. It could be around, around 3% or maybe a little 3% levels, that would be
Okay.
decent. And that's already within the BSP's inflation target of 2 to 4%. So first quarters, that would be the sweet spot actually when it comes to the data. There's really a good chance for, say, for the first quarter for inflation to hover around 4% levels or even less than 4%,
But
especially January.
but to clarify, sir, for the end of the year, it's 6% at the very least.
Yeah, the average,
The
Diego. It's
average.
yeah,
Great, great.
yeah, yeah. There's still, of course, the price increases are still there, but they're already at a slower pace. But of course, prices, uh, typical Filipino with a finite budget or
Mhm.
limited budget would still feel the impact of higher prices, and that's still a drag on, of course, the spending power, and also a drag on economic growth, coupled with relatively
Yes,
higher
yes.
interest rates that are used to control and better manage inflation by the monetary authorities worldwide.
But I guess we just have to see what happens for the rest of the year. Thank you very much for your insights. Unfortunately, sir, that's all the time we have. But we hope to have you back on the show. Thank you very much for joining us, RCBC Chief Economist, Mike Ricafort.